Rural China is paying the cost of the country's rapid economic gains. Separation of families, disappearing villages, and left behind children and seniors. Will families ever return to their home soil? Can a village look after its elderly residents? How can our country protect its children from abuse and neglect? Several girls have fallen victims of rape. From north to south, join Feng Xin in search of rural recovery on CCTV News.
Now, China's urbanization over the past 3 decades has sent 260 million rural residents to cities to help support this country's rapid economic growth. But not all farmers are able to give up their land to become city dwellers. China still has more than 200 million working farmers. Since farming is barely sufficient to earn a living these days, can rural families still live on the land without having to migrate to cities? In the second episode of our Rural Recovery series, one young man from Sichuan province has given it a try. Our Feng Xin reports.
This is a scene Tang Liang had been dreaming about for his entire childhood. Family members eating together, talking and laughing, never have to be separated. Growing up in this village, Tang is one of the few young faces you can still find nowadays.
When
I was little, my village was quite bustling. But later, many residents started to leave for cities because their land couldn't feed a family. The village became shabby and lost its vitality. Almost all the young people have left.
Tang's parents were forced to join the trend too. For 12 years, his mother had to work 16 hours a day at a shoe factory in South China's Guangdong province, saving money for her son's tuition fees. She hadn't returned home for 6 years. Even now, she still remembers the day she rejoined her children.
Tang Liang held me up and swirled me around. I just couldn't hold my tears. But I didn't want to make him cry, so I turned my back and took out some shoes I made at the factory and some snacks from my bag. I couldn't even recognize my younger son.
Tang Liang's brother and sister-in-law had worked at factories in Guangdong for many years as well. Their combined monthly wages of 6,000 yuan tightened considerably when they had a baby.
I was hoping to find a way where an ordinary rural family can support itself through cultivation on their own land.
As the only university graduate in the family, Tang quit a well-paying office job in the metropolis and returned to his village in 2013. He rented some land his neighbors had given up, making their farm 6 times larger than the household average in the area. He estimates that this would be the amount of land owned by a Chinese rural family in 20 years. Each morning, Tang's father and brother Tang Jing work in the field. At noon, Tang Jing and his wife clean and dry the ginger, getting them ready for delivery. In the afternoon, he packages the products for their customers all over China. Since the products are all pollution-free, they can be sold at higher prices. Tang Liang is in charge of management, accounting, and customer service. Since the family farm sells its products directly through online shops, it can save some intermediate costs. Tang Liang's family is the only one in this village that lives on farming and where the family members are not separated. A third of the families in this 40-household village still grow crops on their small stakes of land. And since each family's land is no larger than 6 basketball courts, their yields can barely provide a living.
然后到20年后，如果按照目前的社会发展进程层次化的一个速率，那么到20年后大概也还有30%。
Based on the current urbanization rate, in 20 years, a third of China's population will still be rural residents, which will be about 100 million rural families. But cities will never be able to take in as many people. So where can they go? Are they all going to work for several gigantic farms as employees, or can some of them live independently and decently by operating a farm?
能够通过这种相对自主、独立自主的一个经营的方式，然后有一个好的一个存在方式。
Many young farmers from neighboring areas often come to visit Tang Liang's family farm. They're hoping to make their villages home again, too. Feng Xin, CCTV, in Chengdu, Sichuan Province.
Now, to talk more about this topic, joining me in the studio is CCTV's Feng Xin. First of all, give us an idea of the scale of urbanization in China now.
Sure, Qiuyuan. China's urbanization is unprecedented in scale and speed. Well, research has found that China's urban population has roughly quadrupled in the past 3 decades to about 750 million, which is well over half the country's total. And it's likely to rise by a further 240 million by 2050, meaning 75% of the country's population will live in urban areas. China now has 15 cities with more than 10 million residents. This internal migration is by far the largest in the world.
And in your story, you showed a young man and his family sort of beating the urbanization drift. How has urbanization disadvantaged rural family like this man, Tang Liang?
Well, urbanization has raised the living standards and transformed the lives of hundreds of millions of Chinese. It has also generated significant social challenges. As many as 275 million migrant workers live in cities but hold a rural resident permit or 户口. As a result, they suffer from systematic disadvantages in the labor market and public services such as education, healthcare, the pension system, and other forms of social protection. China's Gini ratio, which measures income gaps, has risen above 0.4. The range here is between 0 and 1, and 0.4 is the international red line, which signals significant social inequality. When it comes down to rural families like Tang Liang's, the effect is quite obvious. Agricultural production generates little income, and rural families aren't allowed to trade their land, so they can't get much value from it. When farmers come to work in cities in low-skilled positions and are denied basic services, their lives becomes even harder. Qiuyuan.
Now, this man you talked to in the story, he's a university graduate. He gave up a well-paid job in the city and returned to his village. This thinking and practice is very different from his parents' generation. But is he an exception for his generation, or are more and more young people are choosing to returning to their home village?
Well, this is definitely a new trend. A growing number of these so-called new farmers are breaking into the agricultural industry. They're well-educated and good at using social media and internet commerce. They're keen on developing traditional farming methods and passionate about re-establishing rural communities. A 2014 study released by e-commerce giant Alibaba estimates that at least 1 million new farmers are embracing the internet to help their production and marketing. They have become a significant force to supplement the existing large-scale industrialized agricultural production line in China. Now you can find interactive maps of Tang Liang's family farm and pictures of how the family has transformed their home by scanning the code at the bottom of your screen with your smartphone. You can also find more on my Rural Recovery series from this multimedia collection. That's for me. Back to you.
Many thanks, Feng Xin, for that.